What's up, guys? Welcome to the highlight series. This is episode 4. We're here with my man Bruno. Bruno, welcome.
Happy to be here, man. Happy to be here.
So Bruno has a crazy story. Bruno started in the solar industry. Walk us through it. Started about a year ago. You've gone from setter to setter captain. Now amazing at closing. One of the top closers. One of the top 5 closer checks the last couple weeks. Kind of walk us through how you got into solar. Obviously, Jake Harrison got you in. Walk us through that. Where was your mindset? There's a lot to share, so let's go through it.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, the biggest thing for me is I've worked with Jake prior. He's my rugby coach growing up, so he's known me for a while. Trusted him when I worked with him before. And I was in the car business multiple years, started as a detailer, and was given an opportunity to do sales and kind of moved up from there up the ranks. And just got to a point where, it was almost burning me out. Couldn't really spend time with my family. I was trying to get married at the time, and, especially with work, like, support's huge, and having a wife that can support you as well is huge as well, You don't want to ruin anything like that. So reaching out to Jake, kind of like, hey, man, like, I see these guys posting all these checks, all this stuff's getting crazy in California. Like, is this real? And all he texted me was, you need to come see for yourself. Didn't get into details. Nothing's like, just got to come check it out. And from Utah, like, there's tons of people that do, like, door to door, and whether it's like pest, alarms, or solar. So when I reached out to him, I think I met you that day, the first day, and sat down with him and Nick, and was just like, yeah, man, like, you come, you crush it. Just come try it. And it was kind of a risk because I had gotten engaged. I just got married, and that was in October. Went on my honeymoon, and then, 2 months being married, I told my wife, hey, I'm packing my bags, stay here, I'll be back, like, gonna do it for 2 months, see what it's about. And I was only married for the 2 months, came out here from February, and it was a humbling experience for me, like, I was, almost top dog at my dealership, like, killing it, crushing with numbers, and then I come here and I got to start as a setter, and I was like, oh shit, like, that's a humbling experience for somebody, got dropped off in the hood in Santa Ana, wearing my brand new Jordans, my brand new iPad. I was gonna get jumped out there, so it was good but funny experience, but yeah, it was very humbling for me.
Yeah. Walk us through why solar and what you learned along the way setting.
Yeah, I mean, learning along the way setting is huge. You kind of, like, more so you're on your own island. Greatest thing about this job is you determine, what you're worth. You determine how you're going to be successful in this job. So I think that's huge starting out as a setter, especially coming over here to New Suns, like, versus any other company. I could have definitely just hopped ship and like, hey, I want to be a closer and do my own thing. And when I first met with Jake, like, I told him, like, no, I want to start as a setter because I want people to know me from, like, being a setter and then moving up the ranks. I think that's more than, just starting at the top, right?
Yeah.
So I think, like, starting from being a setter and then progressing up to that is just, you're on your own island. You determine your own success. And when you're on the doors, it's like, hey, if you're in area, if you're in hood, like, be present with where you're at, right? If you're in hood and you're knocking and you're working, like, you're knocking and you're working. And when you're at home relaxing or with family, like, you're home relaxing with family. But biggest things, like, be present and just, like, you're on your own island, right? Like, so you're always in your head talking to yourself, hey, how am I going to knock this next door? How's this next interaction going to go? And I think that's huge. Is just when you're on your own island, that's how you build confidence. Is more so just self-reflecting.
What do you think? Yeah, I think you're exactly right. What do you think attributes to the success that you've had? Obviously, you've kind of excelled every rank along the way, setter, captain, now closing, and it's been a year. And I think why I wanted to do this highlight series with you is you're the perfect example of how it's supposed to go, right? If people are locked in, they understand, hey, I'm starting here. And you can even say, hey, I'm starting at the bottom. Doesn't really mean anything because as we were in correlation earlier today, we had a setter that made $6,000 yesterday.
Yeah.
And so what do you feel like attributes to the success you've had along the way at excelling at every level of the job?
I think, for sure, like, we always talk about it, like, hard work beats talent. I always do the analogy with my guys, like, hey, in order to be good at a job or be great, like, you have to go through, like, the learning curve and the growing pains, right? Like, so I always give my guys analogies in meetings, like, you start a job at Starbucks, you're not going to be able to make every drink, on the menu. You're going to have to be there a couple days or a couple weeks to get that down. So for me, it's just more like putting in the time. We always talk about hard work beating talent.
Yeah.
I talked about it in correlation today, but as well as, like, hey, in sports, you always hear these big guys with big names coming out, And then the guys that are actually go into the Hall of Fame or, get inducted or break records are the guys that, nobody's even heard of, right?
Yeah.
So I think coming from that, it's like, hey, whether you're just starting or, you've been in it for a long time, it's like, hey, hard work always beats talent. Don't get comfortable. I mean, that's the biggest thing is if you're comfortable, you're doing the job wrong, because when you first start this job, if you're uncomfortable anywhere you are and you're uncomfortable, there's ways that you can grow and there's opportunity for growth for sure.
Yeah, I like what you said. I'm a huge believer in that. I think the only way you grow is by being uncomfortable and being in situations that either are going to break you or make you. And I think this job, it's they always say pressure is a privilege. And I think this job, every level on the way, is you have an added sense of pressure of like, okay, I'm now this, I got to go succeed, and this is how I succeed. The nice thing with this job is kind of the writing's on the wall, but just because the writing's on the wall and like, okay, if you do this, this, and this, you'll get this, doesn't mean everyone does it, right? And I think I'm a big believer in what you said is I think hard work trumps everything. I think you can work your way through this job to the top. And I don't think day one it requires a lot of skill. I don't think it requires a lot of talent. And I think that's the beautiful thing of the job is entry-level position setting. You say 4 sentences, you focus on your most valuable skill set, your work ethic. And I think along the way, the harder you work, the more skills you gain, the more confidence you gain, the more talent you gain. And then eventually you wake up, you're like, oh man, I'm a closer now. And so kind of walk us through, you've been setting, setter captain, now you're a closer. What advice would you give to a setter that just started today that you wish you would have known back then? Obviously you had a ton of success, but there's still probably things you wish you would have maybe worked harder, done this, done that. What advice would you give a brand new rookie starting out?
Just starting out, like, I think a lot of people, especially in our age group, all the younger guys want to come out here, like, make a quick buck, make a lot of money in a short period of time and just get rich doing it. So my advice would kind of be like, hey, instead of more so on the money side, like be more on the growth side, right? Yeah. So like anybody can come and do a job and make some money. I think when you start a new job, and especially like this is like, yeah, the money's great, but also the growth that comes with it as an individual and like just on yourself is like huge as well. So I think that's the biggest thing is like when you're starting out, it's like, hey, obviously don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid if your first 2 weeks in and you haven't got a deal or you haven't made money. It's like, hey, hard work always will beat talent. Hard work will always add up. And, be there just for like the journey, for the ride. I think that's the biggest thing with new reps, growing up, like I have people come from a smaller town, guys working at grocery stores, been bagging for 10, 15 years. Like, hey, you don't want to be, I always tell the guys, you don't want to be the guy bagging groceries for 10 or 15 years. You want to be the guy that started doing that, moved on to better things, went on a journey, and just kind of took all that growth with him as well, and then kind of grew as a person.
Yeah, I think what you said, I like what you said, is because it's something I'm trying to do, and something I've tried to focus on the last 5-6 years is enjoy the journey, right? I think sometimes the better you get at this job, you're so not even money driven, you're so competitive at being number one. I would say money's just a byproduct of putting in the inputs, right? Money's just a scorecard of this is how I did last week. But I think it's sometimes you get so dialed in, you forget to enjoy the journey and you forget to realize like, yo, I'm in Southern California working with guys my age that all think big, all super driven, they're investing, they're getting ahead in life. And I think that's the unique thing of this job is sometimes you forget like, man, life could be so much worse, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Life could be so much worse. And I like this job because it's really like, yo, you get to go bet on yourself every day. You get to go bet on yourself and say, I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to go do this. And not many jobs offer that in America where it's like, yo, I'm going to go bet on myself. Today I'm worth $7,000. Boom, I'm going to go do that. What advice would you kind of tell the masses closing? Was it rocky at first? Did you kind of jump right into it? You figured it out? Was it harder than you thought? Was it easier than you thought? I think the way we have it set up with setter closer, I think it's the only way to sell solar because I think recruiting a 20-year-old and say, hey, you're going to go close, not happening. Right? And so I think there's a progression along the way and you excelled in that progression. So I imagine closing was easy, but maybe walk us through your thought process on closing. Was it harder? Was it easier? What advice?
I mean, yeah, going up to closing was definitely a different challenge. The biggest thing that I would say is like, something that sets us different from other companies. Like, we take the time to grow, like you said, from setter captain to closer, actually understanding the products. Like you're not just going to go in there and talk about something you don't have any idea of on closing a deal. But I think like, the development process of going through that, for me, when I transitioned to a closer, more so is like, hey, learning the product is great, but actually being able to build a personal relationship and not being scared of customers. And when I say that, it's like, I could go through my whole log sheet since I've been working here, and I could call every single customer I've ever sold,
Yeah.
and they would answer the phone and be like, "Hey, Bruno, what's up?" You know,
Yeah.
because the difference that sets you from a good rep to a bad rep to a horrible rep is, being in communication. When something goes wrong, don't be scared, right? I get tons of referrals and repeat customers from closes because they actually have gone through something that's been bad, whether it's leaks, whatever it may be. But I've always been there to answer the phone where they're like, hey, you know what? I've had stuff go bad and Bruno's always been there. So I'll refer him, right? So I would say the biggest thing is don't be afraid of your customers. A lot of people sell accounts, never talk to them again. I think that's scared selling. Personally, me, if I could get a phone call every day and get 5 referrals, I would love that rather than knocking in 100-degree weather.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, my 2 cents just for closing is like, don't be afraid of your customers.
Yeah, no, I love that advice. I think people don't realize like this is such a relationship sale. And I'm the same way as you. It's like, dude, I want to go have one customer turn into 5 customers. Yeah. And I want that customer to be a sales rep for me. I want them telling their friends. And I would say good business follows good business, right?
100%.
And bad business does, like, if you're selling bad, you're not answering your phone. Customers want someone that knows how to communicate. And they always say communication solves 90% of problems. If you can answer your phone, you can communicate to your reps and your customers, people are going to want to, do business with that person.
100%.
Kind of walk us through. I feel like I attribute a lot of success to someone's leader, right? Mm-hmm. For me, I'm big on that. I'm big on like, show me your leader, I'll show you your path. Mm-hmm. You had Jake that's kind of held your hand to get you here. Walk us through that process and kind of what you attribute your success to having good leaders.
Yeah, I mean, I think that just the availability of leadership, especially where I've been at, has been great. There hasn't been a time where, I've hit up Jake or, Cam or anybody where I'm at and them be like, oh, I don't have time for you. Like, I don't have time. Because I think that's what sets our office apart is, like we're a smaller office, putting up big numbers is like we're available for our guys. And I think that was huge, going through with Jake, as well as like the tough love. Like we give our guys the opportunity to grow, It's like, hey, we're not going to sit here, do training with you all night, do this, like we're going to take our time out of our day. And our guys respect that, where it's like, hey, if Jake or Bruno or somebody's, coming to knock with me, like Jake, like he's like, hey, I'm going to give you this time of day. Like I'm taking time out of my day to help you. Like don't mess it up, I'm giving you all my time. I want all your attention when I'm there. And that's going to help, take it to the next level. And I think the availability of leadership in our office and with Jake personally was great. Having a leader that is like tough love sometimes. Yeah. Those of you guys that know Jake, it's not like hey, I'm gonna help you throughout like all this. Like hey, it's like I'm gonna show you how to do it. I'm gonna show you how to do it this time. Like pay attention and the respect level that I have with him. Like him showing me that definitely helped me take it to the next level. So him not holding my hand through the process of being like hey man, do this. Like this is how it goes. Figure this out, do that. All I need from you is hard work, and I think that's what really helped me get to the next level.
Yeah, no,
so,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, you can tell a lot. Like I said, I mean, I think a number one sign of a leader is how many leaders they go create. And I think your story is super impressive. And we have a bunch of those stories throughout other offices as well, where someone went from setter to setter captain to closer in a year time. And it's like, that's a sign of a good leader. A good leader develops their people. They inspire a vision and they help them along the way to get to the next step. In 5 years from now, you're going to look back. What would you consider your career, or I guess the next 5 years? What would you consider a success? You looking back in 5 years, and you'd be like, I did it. What does that look like?
Success for me is like helping my family and continuously like having the same relationships that I had with people 5 years ago. Because like a lot of people are like, hey, in 5 years I want to be financially free, like this, that. I think for one's like helping my family because I do come from the trenches, like serve sandwiches. I grew up like that, so I would say more so helping my family and maintaining relationships that I've had with people that I had 5 years ago. That for me would mean a lot even in 5 years. So not even the financially free aspect of it, just I think the biggest thing is like it's not what you know, but who you know, and just having that avenue of communication with a lot of people that I have in the past 5 years. I think that would be huge for me.
Yeah, no, I love that, man. I think a lot of success is you can tell a lot about a person and how they treat the people they knew before they were successful.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? I'm big on that, man. Do you still have the same relationships? And there's some people you got to cut out of the circle. Mm-hmm. That's just how it goes. But I think a lot of it is not changing who you are, like the core, no matter how good your life gets.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah, no, I love that, man. Bruno, thanks for your time. Proud of you.
Awesome.
Excited to see the future, man.